Welcome to Drive the Daf, clear, structured explanation of the daily daf in 20 minutes. You can even follow in the car.
Sukkah Daf Lamed Tes contains one Mishnah, somewhat close to the beginning of the daf. From where we start a few lines in until the Mishnah, briefly the Gemara discusses where we repeat certain psukim and halal. The Gemara will bring two customs, and then discuss the bracha that we say on halal, whether there's a option to not say the bracha in the bracha before halal or the bracha after halal. Then we get to the Mishnah, which introduces a completely new topic, and that's the subject of buying lulav and esek and nasim and haravas that are from Shemitah. Which ones are you allowed to buy? Which ones are you not allowed to buy? And if you can buy them, what are the circumstances in which you can actually use money to get them? Is there a different way to do that? The Gemara will discuss what the problem is and get deeper into the halachas of Shemitah as it pertains to fruits. And that's a subject that will go into the next daf deeply. So the Gemara begins with discussing repeating psukim and halal. We had said that some places have a meaning to repeat certain psukim at the end of halal. The Gemara brings two versions of this custom here. The Gemara says that Rebbe would repeat from Ana Hashem until the end. That is the last few psukim of halal. And the Gemara says that Rabbi Elazar ben Parta repeated more than that. He would say each psukim, each pasuk twice, all the way back to Oidcha, which is where we begin repeating psukim. Now, as we've explained on the previous daf, the reason for this is that in the last chapter of Tehillim, which is part of Hallel, most of the psukim are dual. They express similar ideas one after the other, with the exception of the last 9 psukim. So therefore, we, in order to follow the pattern of having 2 psukim for each idea, we repeat each pasuk, saying them twice. Okay, now the Gemara moves on to the next thing, which we had seen. Our last Mishnah has discussed saying a bracha on halal, and it said that there are different customs whether you say a bracha or not. It says the Gemara that's referring to the bracha after halal. On that, there are different customs, but everybody agrees you definitely have to say a bracha before halal. That's a halacha quoted by Abaye. Now, in using the expression you have to say a bracha before halal, Abaye says you always have to say a bracha before you do a mitzvah, and the expression for that is you have to say a bracha oiver la'asiyasan. Oiver is translated as before, and asiyasan means doing, before the doing. Says the Gemara, and this is a famous set of proofs that's brought in many places in Shas. The Gemara says, how do you know that the word oiver means before? The Gemara brings 3 psukim. First one, in Shmuel, it says, he passed before the Ethiopian. So avar means to go before. The word oiver means before. Another, that was Rav Nachman Yitzchak. Abaye's source is from the fact that when Yaakov sent messengers, malachim, to Esav with his mincha, with his gifts in Parshas Vayishlach, he said, "V'hu oiver lifneihem," and he passed before them. Again, oiver means before them. And the third one is from the pasuk in Micha, "Vayavar malachim lifneihem, v'Hashem berosham." Again, vayavar here meaning they passed before them. Okay, now we get to the Mishnah, which will introduce the concept of Shemitah fruits. So let's first discuss the mitzvah of Shemitah and give a brief introduction. Shemitah is the 7th year. Every 7th year, the halacha is that you're not allowed to work the fields, you're not allowed to guard the fields, the produce of the field has to be hefker, and the things which grow during Shemitah, you're allowed to eat them. As a matter of fact, you are only allowed to eat them, you're not allowed to do anything else with them. Now, you're technically allowed to sell them, but you have a big problem. That is that the fruits have kedushas shmita. They have a special holiness and have to be treated with a special halacha that it has to be eaten. It can't be destroyed or used for any other use. It can't be, that kedusha cannot be misused. So eating shmita fruits is the best way, is the best thing to do with them. That's what they're designed for. The Torah says la'achal, it's for eating. If you sell them, that kedusha also applies to the money that you give to buy them. And the person who now has that money has money with kedusha shmita on it, and whatever he uses that money to purchase will then have kedusha shmita. The problem is if he uses it to buy something that you can't eat, then he's wasting, he's destroying the kedusha shmita. So if he uses it to buy a horse, so what's he going to do with that? He's going to work the horse. That is using Shemitah Kedusha improperly. Therefore, we don't want people to buy things from Amaratzim. We don't want people to buy things with Kedusha Shvius, Kedusha Shemitah from Amaratzim, because they will misuse that Kedusha. Now, that's if you buy a large amount from him. If you buy a small amount, the Gemara says, and here we're incorporating the Brisas that will follow this Mishnah. If you buy a small amount, then you could assume that he's going to spend it on food and he's going to eat it. What's a small amount? The amount that it requires that one spends on 3 meals. That's 1 day's worth of food. He's probably going to spend it on 1 day's worth of food, and therefore, in a situation like that, even Amaretz, you're allowed to purchase Shemitah produce from him. The money that he will get, which will have Kedusha, will probably be spent on food. Now, if, however, he's guarding the food, he's guarding the fields, he's keeping them locked, they're not allowing anybody in them, then he's violating the Torah's halacha, then you're not allowed to buy from him even a tiny amount the size of an isser, even something smaller than a coin called an isser. You're not allowed to buy that from him because he's guarding it. And if he's guarding it, he's definitely trying to make money here, and then he's going to end up not spending it on anything. He's going to end up storing it and saving it and investing it for whatever he wants, and therefore you cannot do that. So again, those are the 3 levels of halacha. If he's guarding the fields, you can't buy anything from him, even a tiny amount the size of an isser. If he's leaving it open for anybody to take and he's selling you, you're allowed to buy a fruit or 2 as long as the amount of money that you're spending is only the amount that you need to buy 3 meals or less. If you want to spend more than that, you're not allowed to because we're concerned that the Amaretz is going to misuse it. Now, says the Mishnah, somebody who wants to buy a lulav set, he wants to buy Hoshana, is what we call Hoshana in the Gemara, he wants to buy a set of the 4 minim. So he's allowed to buy the lulav, but he's not allowed to buy the esrog. The esrog has Kedushas Shvius, and we are afraid he's going to give money to the Amaretz. Rashi inserts here the word that this has to be a Talmid Chacham buying from an Amaretz. You're afraid that he's going to use it improperly. He's going to use that Kedushas Shvius improperly. The Gemara quotes brises that go through the halachas as we just explained them. The Gemara says, what should we do if there's no other way to get the esrog from the guy? So the Gemara says, you should do what's called havlah. You should charge more for the lulav. The amount he should charge for the lulav should be the amount equal to the value of the esrog and the lulav together. And then he should give you the esrog as a gift. Now, if ordinarily, he should just give you the esrog as a gift. He doesn't want to, so then he can pay, let's say the esrog is worth $100 and the lulav is worth $50. You charge $150 for the lulav, and then take the esrog as a gift. Now, this is a trick, and we all know it's a trick. It's not fooling anybody, but that's okay, because the designation of the money is for the lulav, where you don't have a Kedushas Shvius problem. The Gemara will explain why. And it's not for the esrog. Okay, now the Gemara quotes the rest of the halachas there, and the Gemara proves that these are the halachas as we spell them out. The Gemara just asks, is it true that if he's selling you hefker things, you're only allowed to buy up till 3 sudas worth, 3 meals worth? We have a brayso which seems to indicate you're allowed to buy even more. The Gemara quotes the brayso. It says that a number of plants that are low value, that grow wild, called a pigum, Hirvuzin, Shitin, Chalglu, Kuspara, that's a coriander, of the mountains, Karpas, which Rashi translates as the celery of the rivers, Gargir Shel Afer, that's a type of mushrooms, it seems. So all these things which are low value plants, so it says you don't have to take meiser from them because they're considered to be hefker. You only have to take meiser from things that have an owner. That's learned from the fact that the Torah says you should give meiser to the Levi because he doesn't have any of his own produce. So it's something that's hefker. He owns just as much as you do, and therefore you don't have to give meiser for it. And Rishon says you're allowed to buy it on Shemitah. You're allowed to buy it even from an Amaretz and Shemitah, because nobody's going to store them. These are hefker things. So the Gemara says here, it does not limit it to 3 meals. So why are we saying that it's limited to 3 meals? So the Gemara says, no, it means here limited to 3 meals. It doesn't say it, but that's what it means. And the expression that's used to say that is that it's bichdei mun. It's the amount which is limited to mun. The Gemara says, how do you know that mun means food? The Gemara quotes a pasuk in Daniel, Vayaman Lahem HaMelech, the king gave them food, and that's how we know that's what the word means. The Gemara now asks about the lulav. Why is there no Kedushas Shvius on the lulav? Why is the lulav different than the esrog? We've been saying all along that the esrog has Shemitah problems. You can't buy an esrog on Shemitah. You could include it in the lulav. Why is the lulav not a problem? Now the Gemara is going to say later that a lulav is not a fruit, but that's on the next daf. But for this daf, the Gemara doesn't say that. The Gemara says lulav is different because if the lulav is fully grown by the time you get to Sukkot, that means that it grew before Rosh Hashanah. It means it grew during the 6th year. We're talking about where Sukkot is Shemitah. It's a Shemitah year. That means that the Shemitah year just began 15 days earlier on Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah is 15 days before Sukkot. So that means that the lulav grew mostly during the 6th year, and therefore it's not Shemitah problem. So Gemara says, well, that the same thing applies to an esrog. Esrog also must have grown before Rosh Hashanah. It didn't grow completely in the last 15 days. So Gemara says it's different. There's which year a certain plant or tree is considered a part of depends on varying halachos. Now we have to determine when a plant or a fruit grows, which year does it belong to? Does it belong to the 6th year? Or does it belong to the 7th year? So the halachos generally are as follows. Fruits, trees, and things like that are part of the year in which the flower fell off and the fruit began to appear. It's what we call chanata. The time that the flower fell off and the fruit began to appear, that's the year that it's a part of. And that's what applies to the lulav branch when it starts to grow. It most definitely started to grow, started to appear well before Sukkot, and therefore it was during the 6th year. Now, an esrog, though, is different than most fruits and most trees. An esrog has the unique halacha of a vegetable, and that is that it doesn't go by when the fruit started to appear, it goes by when you picked it. It doesn't matter when it grew, whenever you picked it, that's the year in which it's part of. You picked it during the Shemitah year, then it's part of Shemitah. You picked it during the 6th year, it's part of the 6th year. Therefore, the Gemara says, the esrog has Kedushas Shviyos because you picked it after Rosh Hashanah. The lulav does not have Kedushas Shviyos because it has the halacha of a regular tree that it goes by when the fruit, the fruit, the branch, whatever it is, began to appear. Now the Gemara challenges this assumption that an esrog has the halachos of vegetables and it goes by when you picked it. And the Gemara quotes a Mishnah which has a discussion between Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Gamliel about 4 halachos of an esrog. Is an esrog like a tree or a vegetable? And the Mishnah says as follows: There's only one situation in which there's a machlokes between Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Gamliel whether the esrog has the halacha of a tree or a vegetable, and that's as far as establishing which year it belongs to concerning the halachos of meiser. You got to know concerning the halachos of meiser which year the esrog is part of as well. Why? Because the year in the Shemitah cycle, year 1, 2, 4, and 5, you got to take meiser sheni. While year 3 and 6, you have to take meiser ani. So you have to know which year does it belong to. So on that, there's a machlokes between Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Gamliel. Rabbi Eliezer says it has the halacha of a vegetable and it goes by when it's picked, and Rabbi Gamliel says it has the halacha of a tree and it goes by when the fruit begins to appear. However, Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Gamliel do agree that esrog has a halacha of a tree concerning 3 other halachas. That's the halacha of arla, that the halacha of arla does apply to it. It doesn't have the halacha of a vegetable. And neter avai, which is at the 4th year it has special kedusha. That is also halacha applies only to trees and fruits and not to vegetables. And trees, shmita, that it's established as part of the shmita year in which it began to appear. That Rabbi Eliezer and the Chachamim both agree. So you see, nobody holds that you follow when it's picked. So why is our Gemara saying you follow when it is picked off of the tree? Now the reason why there's a problem with esrog, we're not clear what it is because of the way that vegetables differentiated from fruits is based on how they're watered. Different types of water sources are used for vegetables than trees, and esrogim fall into the category of vegetables as far as that's concerned. So anyway, we're left with the problem here is that the Gemara is assuming that a lulav, you establish which Shemitah year, whether it's part of Shemitah year or the 6th year, based on when it begins to appear. And in esrog, we said it goes by based on when you picked it, but we see that's not true. Everybody agrees that it does not. Both Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Gamliel agree that it does not go by when you picked it, it goes by when it begins to appear. So the Gemara answers that there's a different Tana. And that different Tana is found in a Brisa, which we'll have to edit a little bit, but the Brisa says as follows. Rabbi Yaisi said that Avtulmus testified that there were 5 elders, the name of 5 elders, that an esrog follows the halacha of being picked. It's like a vegetable. Concerning the halachos of meiser, and that is Rabbi Seinu in Usha, who said that it concerns both meiser and shmita. The Gemara edits this by saying who brought in shmita here. We didn't say anything about shmita. We only talked about meiser. The Gemara says so you have to edit a little. Rabbi Yossi quoted of Thomas as saying that an esrog goes by when it's picked concerning meiser, but not concerning shmita. Concerning shmita, it goes by when it begins to appear, begins to grow. And the Rabbanan say, no, both ways, both halachos, both meiser and shviyos, it goes by when it was picked off the tree. So anyway, so there we see the opinion of the Chachamim that they do hold that an esrog goes by when it's picked, and that is therefore very easily to say that our Mishnah, which differentiates between an esrog and a lulav, holds like that Tana that an esrog goes by when it's picked, while a lulav goes by when it begins to.
Drive the Daf is a project of the Grand Woodlands Shul and is presented by Rabbi Yitzchak Landa. Find us on YouTube or subscribe to daily emails by emailing drivethedaf@gmail.com.